Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm finally going to do what's been requested for a long time, which is I'm going to do a few parts on this. So this is just going to be a basics, but I'm going to do a few parts on how I RNG abuse on Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald for the Game Boy Advance. So basically, I'm just going to in this video, this is going to be a tutorial, kind of some things to look out for when you are using Pokefinder and also Eon Timer, as if you do not utilize Eon Timer or Pokefinder correctly, then of course you will not be able to get your shinies you're wanting or your specific hitting your specific frames you're wanting and so on. So I'm still going to ask all of you to go and check out I'm a Blissy's channel first. I give him all the credit because I have watched his channel for a very, very long time. And yeah, so I just give him all the credit. And, I've been RNG abusing for quite a few years actually. Like when I first RNG abused in Pokemon Sapphire, um, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe. Like it was back when RNG Reporter was the tool to use, not Pokefinder. So anyways, as you guys can see right here, I'm on Pokefinder. You want to be on the Gen 3 tab here. Now I just want to cover all the tools here first. So you got a few different tools. You got the IV calculator, which is super helpful for finding out how far you are out on your frames, because basically what I have learned from doing RNG abuse, I'm going to bring on Eon Timer right now, and let's go to Gen 3. What I've learned from doing RNG abuse for the last few years and figuring out how to do it on Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, which Emerald was quite hard to do. It's definitely not a walk in the park. Is that Eon Timer, your delay, like your calibration you'll need to set it to, is different per system, if that makes sense. So when I use my DS Lite to RNG abuse, I have to have a different calibration here. My DS Lite has a different delay than my Game Boy Advance SP does. So I got two different delays. So whenever I've used my DS Lite, my delay has been around 100 frames or so, or the calibration, I guess not 100 frames, but it's been around 100 on here. So as you can see right here, if I type in 100, then it's going to change the time there as well and everything. So basically, I found, yeah, so my DS Lite is around that 100 on the calibration, plus 100 because there's also negative as well. And my Game Boy Advance has typically been around 65 to 80 is where my calibration is, where I'll be hitting my target frames pretty consistently as long as I'm not way out of timing. When I, of course, end up timing it on Eon Timer when it beeps down and you hit Eon Timer right to 0. So it is per system from my experience. My DS Lite has a different delay than my Game Boy Advance does. So I want to make that very clear to you guys. If you're struggling to narrow down your timing, just use one system, figure out what the delay is on one system, and if you're wanting to RNG abuse on multiple different games like Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, your calibrations should stay the same as long as you use the same system. So when I bounce from Sapphire to Ruby or to Emerald, my calibration, if I'm using my Game Boy Advance, stays the same and I hit my target frames like 95% of the time. So I just want to make that very clear because that's one of the biggest tips I have for you guys is if you're RNG abusing, use the same system, get your calibration narrowed down on that system and keep it that way. Write it down. I have a little notebook with all my calibrations and stuff. So basically, yeah, on my notebook right next to me, I got whenever I use my Game Boy Advance, it's in 65 to 80 range. Usually I just throw it around 67 or 70. And then whenever I use my DS Lite, it's around that 100, 110 sometimes too, is where I find it to be the best. So just wanted to make that very, very clear. So since we are on Eon Timer, I'll go into the settings here. Of course, you have to make sure you input your console correctly. So if you're using the GBA, if you're using the Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP, you'd have your Eon timer set to GBA. If you're using a Nintendo DS or DS Lite, set it to NDS-GBA. Just make sure you have your setting correctly. Always go into your settings, make sure you have your console correctly and everything in there. And then you can change the sound. I don't really care. I like the beep. I also found that personally, I love having the audio visual on, because when you have the audio visual on, then your timer will also blink as it counts down. So I always have that on. We'll see if it works here. Sometimes Eon Timer 3.0 glitches a bit and it doesn't actually blink, so we'll try it right now so you guys can see what that looks like. So yeah, as you guys could see there, it was blinking away. I like that. That helps me personally with my timing. If you guys just are, if you only really like, the sound beeping in your ears, then just do the strict audio one, right? Or if you don't like the beeping and you focus better with the visual blinking, then do the visual one. But personally, I like having the audio and the visual. It just helps me time it, my button presses perfectly. So that's all you really need to know about the preferences. Now let's get out of Eon Timer and get into Pokefinder. So first things first, once you find your trainer ID and your secret ID, use the IV calculator. Even though your early route Pokemon are super low level, like, level 2 all the way to maybe like level 10, once you finally get yourself a Pokemon that can use Sweet Scent, whether it's a Surskit or you wait until you can get an Oddish, the IV calculator still will help you regardless if the Pokemon's level 2 or if it's level 50. I always use the IV calculator because if you miss your target frame, catch the Pokemon, plop all the stats into the IV calculator. I'll show you right here. So you put in your Pokemon, you put in the nature, you put in all the stats, and then it'll give you ranges of what the IVs are looking like, so then you can narrow it down to which frame you actually hit. So the IV calculator I find super helpful. I always recommend that you guys use it. I use it all the time just to make sure I'm hitting the right frame. But of course, this is also another scenario of this is when you've just started out RNG abusing. You don't have your calibration set for your system, and you're trying to narrow that down. Use the IV calculator to get that narrowed down. Once you start hitting your target frames, whether it's a shiny or just a Pokemon with specific IVs, then once you get that narrowed down, figure out your calibration, things will just get easier from there. All right, so that is the IV calculator. Yeah, and then nothing else in there is really that helpful. Gen 3 tools. So basically you got all these different tools here. I don't really dabble in them too much. I usually just go to the Gen 3, and then static encounters is your legendary Pokemon. The fossil Pokemon, I believe, are considered static encounters, and basically anything that isn't in the wild where it'll be sweet scenting. So let's go into the Gen 3 Wild tab, because I definitely have some things I want to go over in here. So the best way to do it is once you find out your trainer ID and your secret ID, make a profile. So I got my Ruby profile right here. So like my trainer ID, secret ID right there for whenever I'm RNG abusing on Ruby. Whenever I'm RNG abusing on Sapphire, there's my trainer ID, my secret ID right there. And Emerald, trainer ID, secret ID right there. So whenever I am RNG abusing on any of these games, it's super easy. Just create a new profile. Make sure you have them up in these drop-down boxes, and then you can just quickly swap between each game. So, now of course, if you're RNG abusing on Ruby and Sapphire, you will need your seed to be 5A0. So let's go back to one of those games. So 5A0 is your seed. And then, as you guys will probably already know if you've RNG abused a little bit, we'll make this full screen there. Then basically to find out what in the world your shiny frames are, then you just go here. If you want it to be star or square when you transfer it up to later gens, then you can, but I just always click star/square so I can get any shiny, because I really don't care. I highly doubt I'll be transferring any of these Pokemon up to the Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet kind of thing. So yeah, then here's your route. So you're choosing all your routes and everything. Then let's go Route 130, and then so we got it set to star/square shinies in the grass, and then also you can change it up to gold rod, old rod, good rod, super rod, and then boom, there is all my shiny frames and everything right here. Oh yeah, that's Route 130, so that's only why not. We'll change that back here. Route 119, I know there we go. So here's all the stuff right here. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. I don't know why it's so jammed together. There, let's just extend all this right here. But yeah, these are all the shiny frames and all the shiny Pokemon associated with each frame. So then you know what you're hitting here. So if I'm going for the Zigzagoon, I'm gonna know it's gonna be level 27, shiny of course, hasty nature. Here's the IVs that it has. I'm like, okay, you know, Zigzagoon, not really wanting a Zigzagoon, so we'll go to Oddish. Oddish, you know, modest nature, pretty good for Oddish. Good stats here as well. Special attack is really high. Speed is really high on the EVs. Defenses suck, but high special attack for a modest Oddish isn't too bad at all. So then when, of course, you put it into your Eon timer, you'll want to make sure you have your delays set up correctly. I'm just going to flip to my page here quickly, and then I'll go over what the delays are for sweet scenting. All right, so I just had to make sure I got my little book here all in front of me and good to go so I can go over all the delays. I will put these all in the description as well for you guys. So if you are, you know, in the case of right now, I have it just changed it up a little bit because I was mentioning right aways on Emerald. If you are RNG abusing on Emerald, your seed is 0. If you're RNG abusing on Ruby and Sapphire, of course you need, I forgot to mention at the start of the video, you need to have a dead battery. Emerald doesn't matter, but Ruby and Sapphire, you need to have a dead battery. If you don't have a dead battery, it's not going to work. So you have a dead battery, and then your seed is always 5A0. On Ruby and Sapphire, on Emerald, your seed is just 0, regardless if your battery is dead or not. So now that we got that out of the way, basically what I wanted to go over was to tell you guys that once you are sweet scenting, you have a sweet center and you're inside a cave, your delay is going to be 268 frames. So you put in 268 frames, then you'll see on the advances, when I hit generate, you'll see on the advances right here, it is going to lower down a little bit. Oh, I forgot to... star/square, disable filters, there we go. So I don't know why that disable filters was on. So now we're going to do that again. So delay is 0, boom, 23098, delay in the side of a cave, 268 is your frame delay on sweet sanding inside of a cave. It drops it down for you, so you don't even need to use a calculator. So then that is what you'd put in your Eon timer. You'd put in your target frame, then as 22896. So that is going to be your target frame for this Zubat in Altering Cave. So now that we have that all out of the way, let's get rid of Eon timer here. Now let's move it to a different route that is outside. So let's go route 112. And we'll get rid of our delay for now. Actually, we'll change it because if you are outside, your delay is 261 frames. It is not 268. It's not the same for inside of a cave as it is outside. I want to make that very, very clear. 261 outside in the grass, 268 inside caves. So then, boom, here is our frames for Numel. Those are the only shinies that I can get right here, unless if I was to wait super long to get a Meryl. So yeah, then I'd put in this is our target frame. 22837 is our target frame. So basically that is all I wanted to go over with the sweet sanding. Make sure you have your delay correctly. It is different whether you're in the grass or if you are in a cave. Now I want to go over a couple other delays as well. If you guys are RNG abusing for Kyogre or Groudon in Ruby and Sapphire, your frame delay is 654 frames. Rayquaza in Ruby and Sapphire is 2 frames. All 3 Regis are 56 frames. Beldum, after you've beaten the game, is 167 frames. And then Latios and Latios on Southern Island is 404. Latios on Southern Island is 431. So those are all the frame delays for Ruby and Sapphire. So of course, if you were doing a static legendary, then we would go back to Pokefinder and then static. Okay, so I am back to static encounters. I was just going through editing my video, and for some odd reason, right when I got to static encounters, my audio cut out in my video. So I'm going to redo this here. So basically, in static encounters, you got the starters in Emerald, and then you have the fossils in Emerald, the gifts, which are cast form, Beldum, why not? And then you got stationary, which Kecleon, Electrode, Sudowoodo in Emerald, and then legends, all the legendaries there, and then your events, which are Lugia, Ho-Oh with Deoxys, and Mew, and then of course your static encounters would change if you go to Ruby or Sapphire. So you only have those starters. You only have the Johto starters available in Ruby and Sapphire. Your fossils are the same, stationary, Kecleon and Electrode, and then legends, all these legendaries right here. So we're on Ruby right now. For this demonstration, I'm going to go to */square shinies. Now let's say I want to get a shiny Rayquaza. We're going to go to generate, and then boom, adamant shiny Rayquaza at 4,309 frames. So the delay on Rayquaza in Ruby and Sapphire is only 2 frames. So we're going to generate that, and then 4307. So that's not too bad at all for the shiny frames right there. So then of course on Eon Timer, I'd put that in on my Eon Timer. 4307 is my target frame because I have the 2 frame delay on Rayquaza and in Ruby and Sapphire. So that is the frame delay there on Rayquaza. Now let's say I'm missing my frame. I'm not getting the shiny Rayquaza. I'm getting a little bit frustrated. I'm not getting the shiny Rayquaza that I'm wanting, so then I'll go to 42. I always, before I RNG abuse a Pokemon, I get the frame that I want in shiny, so 4307 is what we're aiming for. So I'm going to go 4290 because I'm usually pretty decent at getting fairly close to my target frame. And then max advances, I usually just leave it that. And then we're going to get rid of this. We're going to go any Rayquaza for now, and then generate. So now we're going to scroll down until we get 4307, the shiny frame. As you can see, there's careful, brave, sassy, lax, modest, impish. So at least there's not really much adamant that are really close, like within 5 frames, either before or after, kind of a thing. So that's nice. As long as I'm within 5 frames before or after, I can pretty well tell what the Rayquaza is. So then I'm going to use a Master Ball, catch the Rayquaza. Let's say I got a careful Rayquaza and I input the stats in the IV calculator. It comes out with exactly, or the ranges are really close to these stats right here. Then I know I'm 2 frames before. I'm going to adjust my calibration kind of thing. But yeah, that's basically what I do when I'm RNG abusing for any Pokemon. I go around that frame there, find out what the natures are, so then I have them all listed. So then if I catch it and it's a modest Rayquaza, then I can kind of narrow it down that it's either this frame or potentially this frame. I might have been really, really early. Then I put in the IV calculator to double check. I know I'm 2 frames late once I put it in because the IVs are far different than this modest Rayquaza. Then boom, I know I'm 2 frames late. Adjust my Eon timer accordingly. But it's kind of like hit and miss. If I'm 2 frames early or 2 frames late, sometimes I'll just not even bother calibrating it because it could have just been, my own human error and I was out just by 2 frames early or 2 frames late because that's not that much time. It's pretty close. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So I might just leave it the same and then try again for another try or two. And if I'm still missing this frame, then I'll input the calibration and be like, okay, I'm late. I'm constantly, 2 or 3 frames late. Then I input it into Eon timer to put in what frame I hit, and then it'll calibrate accordingly depending on what I am, if I'm early or late. So that's what I do there. Now, yeah, so to go over all the frame delays here for the static encounters and stuff, I'm going to put these all in the description, but you have to make sure that you input the correct delay depending on what game you're using, because the static encounter delays are different for Ruby and Sapphire than they are in Emerald. So I just want to make sure that that is very clear for you guys. The static encounter delays are different depending on if you're on Ruby and Sapphire or Emerald. So yeah, that's basically what I do for RNG abusing in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. I hope this was a useful tutorial for you guys. I want to do some more videos. I know it's been requested that I do a Feebas video because I did RNG abuse for a shiny Feebas in Pokemon Emerald, and I used shiny Milotic throughout my entire playthrough on that game, which was pretty cool. I had never used Milotic in Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald before throughout the playthrough, so that was really cool that I was able to do that. And then I would like to do, since on my Emerald version, on my Ruby and Sapphire I've caught all the legendaries. I RNG boost and shiny to catch all shiny legendaries on both of those games, but on Emerald I still have, honestly, all the legendaries I think I still have available to RNG abuse. So I can also do some videos on RNG boosting legendaries in Pokemon Emerald. So if you guys would like to see those videos, leave comments down on the below if you have any questions or have any suggestions for RNG abuse related videos you guys want to see, and I'll try and make them to the best of my ability. But I still want you guys, first and foremost, go show some support to I'm a Blissey. I really I wouldn't be able to RNG abuse if it wasn't for him. His tutorials over the years have been phenomenal, and they have taught me how to RNG abuse, and now I'm just sharing some of my tips and tricks, things I found out from RNG abusing on all three Hoenn games on the Game Boy Advance to you guys now, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. I would like to do a few more videos kind of Emerald related, just because Emerald is so much harder to RNG abuse on than Ruby and Sapphire. But I highly recommend, if you guys have Ruby and Sapphire, start on those games. It's just a lot less of a headache to find your trainer ID and secret ID. Emerald took me probably 5 or 6 hours. I'd spend 2 hours a day kind of thing, just trying to hit my target frame, find my trainer ID, secret ID, and RNG abuse my starter, so I knew I hit the correct trainer ID, secret ID on Emerald, because it's basically like a roulette wheel. You just have to be close with your timing when you start up the game, and then you get a spread of 10 potential secret IDs that you could have hit. And then you just have to keep trying them one by one on your starter, RNG abuse your starter to see which frame you hit, and you just gotta put in the work. And Emerald is quite tedious and can be long, because it took me quite a while to find my secret ID in Emerald. But anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. By all means, if you have any questions, ask away. I want to help you guys as much as I can, because it is really cool to RNG abuse these games however many years later, right? Like over 11 years later now for Ruby and Sapphire, because it came out in 2003. Not 11 years later, 21 years later. I haven't had my morning coffee, as I said when when I was editing my video. I made some mistakes on my speaking, but it happens. So yeah, 21 years later, it's pretty cool to go back and play these games and be able to play through them with an entire shiny team is the reason why I RNG abused and everything. It's cool to be able to do this stuff years later and find fun ways to make these games enjoyable again. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I hope you guys saw some value from it, from my tips and tricks and everything. I just wanted to do an in-depth Pokefinder and Eon Timer video only, and then the next videos I will go over how to catch specific Pokemon. Like Feebas I would like to do a video on because Feebas is fairly difficult, and then also some of the legendaries as well. And I'll show you guys physically me getting them on my Game Boy Advance, hopefully. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, saw some value out of it. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for future videos, drop them in the comments below. I want to make a few more videos. This is just the first part, kind of going over and teaching you guys all the ins and outs of RNG abuse on Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, just using Pokefinder and Eon Timer. Because like I said, if you don't utilize these programs correctly, you will not get your shinies you're wanting or not find your secret ID, trainer ID. So I think it is very valuable to understand the full ins and outs of Pokefinder and Eon Timer to help you guys get those shinies on Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald and RNG abuse on them. So yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. And if you did, leave a like, subscribe for more. I'll see you all in the next one.